Penny from Heaven by Jennifer L. Holm. Chapter 3, Mrs. Morelli's Brains, Part 1. The sign outside says, Felucci's Market, best pork and meat cuts. When I open the door, a little bell rings. Look who it is, Uncle Ralphie calls from behind the long marble counter. He's wearing an apron and talking to a slender woman with stockings that have a tear near the ankle. A little boy with a grubby neck is clinging to one of her legs, and another kid with a smear of jam on his face is wrapped around her other leg. She turns, and I see the round bump of her stomach. Mrs. Chicolos, Uncle Ralphie says grandly, do you know my beautiful niece Penny? My late brother Freddie's girl, God rest his soul. Mrs. Chicolos turns to me and says in a soft voice, How do you do? Glad to know you, I say. Uncle Ralphie turns back to Mrs. Chicolos. Now, you're sure you don't need any ham? I got a real nice ham in the back, just delicious. I can't afford that, she says in the same soft voice. Don't you worry about that, you hear me? He says. You just take care of these beautiful children of yours. Actually, the kids could stand a bath before anyone would call them beautiful, but that's Uncle Ralphie for you. I watch as my uncle cuts and wraps a large chunk of ham and puts it in the bag. Then he wraps up a whole chicken and sticks it in there, saying, The bones will be a good stock. You can get 2, maybe 3 meals out of it, he winks. Good for the baby. She reaches into her handbag, but he just waves her away. I'm not going anywhere. Thank you, Mr. Felucci, she says. He beams at her. My pleasure. She gathers up her bag and walks out of the store, with a cake hanging to her skirt. Ralphie, Aunt Fulvia says as soon as the door closes. What? Uncle Ralphie says. They're good people, Patanella Mia. Patanella Mia is Uncle Ralphie's nickname for Aunt Fulvia. He says it means my little potato. A lot of my Italian relatives have nicknames. Good doesn't put dinner on the table, she snaps back. Uncle Ralphie's always given people food on credit, and he drives Aunt Fulvia crazy. She's the one who really runs the store. Aunt Fulvia sits on a little stool behind the register at the door like a sentry, bringing up purchases, putting half the money in the till and half in the pocket of her skirt. Frankie says that way the government doesn't get the money. I suppose she still hasn't paid us what she owes from last month, Aunt Fulvia says, and then leans over to look at the sleeping baby in the carriage next to her. Baby Gloria can sleep through anything, even Aunt Fulvia. Uncle Ralphie throws up his hands. We'll be in the poorhouse at this rate, Aunt Fulvia mutters. Uncle Ralphie may be a softy, but he's always gets paid back eventually. Every now and then, things would just show up at the store on the back step, like a box of records or some macaroons, and Uncle Ralphie will give a low whistle and say, Look what some little bird has left. The bell on the door rings, and Jack Tizzlewitz is standing there. Jack's 2 years ahead of me at school, and I don't know him very well, but his brother Stanley is in my grade. If it isn't Jack Tizzlewig, Uncle Ralphie says, I got your mother's order already. Hi, Penny, Jack says, glancing back at me. Before I can say anything, the bell on the door rings again, and my cousin Frankie bursts in out of breath. I'm here, he announces. You're late, Aunt Fulvia tells him. Frankie's 12, with dark hair and brown eyes like me. Most people think we're brother and sister, which I don't mind except when he gets into trouble. His mother, Aunt Teresa, is my father's sister. I had to help Ma with the baby, he says. Frankie's got a baby brother, Michael, who's 2 months old. You're changing diapers now? Aunt Fulvia asks. Sure I am, he says, his eyes wide and innocent as an altar boy's. He's had a lot of practice. He's been an altar boy at St. Anthony's for a few years now. He likes it okay, except he sometimes falls asleep during the services. You're full of excuses, huh, kid? Aunt Fulvia says, and then shakes her head. You two go pack up those deliveries. I hear Jack say to Uncle Ralphie, "Thanks, Mr. Felucci," and then he's gone. "Say, I think she believed you," I tell Frankie. "Course she did," he says with a sly wink. Frankie's father, Uncle Angelo, spent some time in jail a few years ago. He robbed a five and dime store, but he wasn't a very good criminal. When he robbed the store, he also took a bunch of candy bars. He ate the candy and threw the wrappers out of his car window as he made his getaway, so the police just followed the trail of candy bar wrappers and caught him. Frankie's crazy about his father and thinks being a criminal would be neat. I worry about him sometimes. We go back to the meat locker. The store is mostly a butcher shop, but we also sell groceries and fresh produce. Over at the butcher table, Uncle Dominic is wearing a bloody apron and grinding beef into hamburger with the hand grinder. He likes working in the back. This way he doesn't have to deal with customers, which is just as well. I don't think his slippers would be good for business. "Hi, Princess," Uncle Dominic says to me. "What's the big buzz?" I ask. "The mound's looking real good for them bums," he says. "I think we've got a shot at the series." "Yeah," Frankie scoffs. "A shot at losing." The Dodgers have made it into the World Series before, but they always lose. The Yankees beat them last year after 7 games. It's enough to make a Bums fan cry. "They'll pull through, you'll see. You gotta have faith," Uncle Dominic says, and I want to believe him. See, a long time ago, before I was born, Uncle Dominic played baseball. He was in the minor leagues and played all over Newport News, Virginia, and Greenville, North Carolina. He was invited to spring training with the Dodgers. But then something happened and he quit baseball, and now he works for Uncle Ralphie in the store. He still pals with a few of the fellas, and sometimes he has good gossip. I don't know why anyone would trade catching balls for chopping up meat, but then it's just one more thing I probably will never understand. Uncle Ralphie walks into the room. "You two kiddies think you can carry all this?" he asks us. "Penny's got to carry that hair around all day," Frankie snickers, and I smack him. "Mimi thinks I pay too much attention to baseball and not enough to fashion. She got it into her head to give me a Tony Home perm at the beginning of the summer and left the solution on too long, and now my hair looks like brown cotton wool." "All right then," Uncle Ralphie says. And he lowers his glasses to the end of his nose and goes over the list with us. The bag with the pork loin is for Mrs. Giaquinto, and the one with the chickens is for Mrs. Weirderhorn. You know where they live, right?" "Sure, sure," Frankie says. "This bag here with the brains goes to Mrs. Morelli." Frankie rolls his eyes and says, "What? She lose hers or something?" I laugh. "Yeah, you think this is enough?" All the Italian ladies around here are crazy for strange things like calf brains and tripe, which is cow stomach, and sweetbreads, which are animal parts I don't think anyone should be putting in their mouth. They like to fry the calf brains. Actually, it all tastes okay as long as you don't think too hard about what you're eating. You two are a pair of regular comedians, aren't you? Uncle Ralphie shakes his head. "Maybe you should go work for Jack Benny." "Maybe we will," Frankie says. Uncle Ralphie cuffs him lightly on the shoulder and says, "Where'd you get that smart mouth, kid?" Frankie says, "From you," and we all laugh. "Ralphie?" Aunt Balvia hollers from up front. "What now, Pantalala mia?" Uncle Ralphie shouts back. "There's a fella up here saying he ordered a whole lamb, and I don't have any record of it," Aunt Balvia says. Uncle Ralphie groans and slaps his forehead. I forgot all about Mr. Leckenstein's ham. He gives a long, suffering sigh. "You two get moving and tell Mrs. Giaquinto I threw in some ham hocks for free." As we pass Aunt Balvia on the way out the front door, she calls after us, "You kids make sure you get paid, you hear me?" End part 1.